on operation of connected and automated public transport, recommendations for demonstration projects and public services. So once again, welcome to everyone. I am Giacomo Cantini from the University of Modena and Reggio Emilia and from ICOR. I'm a researcher and project manager. And as you may know, we were coordinating the SINFONICA project that just came to an end, well, 2 weeks ago, actually, at the end of August. We had a wonderful final event in Brussels 2 weeks ago. And this is one of the last activities of the project. So I will present you today's agenda. After this brief welcome and introduction from my side, Andrew Winder from Ertico will present some recommendation for planning and operating services. Then we will have Maren Link from Freie und Ansenstadt Hamburg, for Hamburg. Then Matthew Shelton from Transport for West Midlands and Elena Patatuka from Etricala. So these are 3 of our 4 research sites where we conducted all the activities of the SINFONICA project. Then the webinar will end with some words from Andrew Winder again on additional recommendation for demonstration projects and the webinar wrap-up. So for the ones of you that don't know SINFONICA project, it has been a 3 years project which started in 2022, and as I said, it finished in August 2025. We were 14 partners from 7 different countries with a budget of almost 4 million euro. And well, the main goal of the project has been to develop functional, efficient, and innovative strategies, methods, and tools to engage CCAM users, providers, and other stakeholders to collect, understand, and structure in a manageable and exploitable way their needs, desires, and concerns related to CCAM. This is about the methodology of the project. First of all, there was the establishment of the groups of interest in each of the 4 research sites. Then the co-creation of participatory methodologies, standardized and at the same time adapted to each context. Then we had a big effort. Actually, the core part of the project has been the 3 rounds of the implementation of the participatory activities in all of the research sites. And after the evaluation of this participatory approach implementation, we conducted a data analysis of all this information, and then we started to develop some tools, namely the Knowledge Map Explorer. That is a tool that is available, it is published, and it's available for all of those interested in check the analysis of the data that we did in the project, where the recommendation that we will talk about today are also included. And these are some of the numbers of the big effort in these participatory approaches in the 4 sites. So as you can see, we completed almost 300 interviews, 36 focus groups, 12 workshops, And apart from this, we conducted a survey, an online survey at European level that got almost 5,500 responses. So I now will give the floor to Andrew to present, to follow with this webinar. Thank you very much and enjoy these presentations.
Thank you very much, Giacomo. So welcome everyone. I will give a quick overview of what we were doing in the final, well, it wasn't just the final phases of the project, it was throughout the project, but obviously most of the recommendations in a project come near the end. So I just share the screen. Before going into the recommendations, okay, you'll have seen part of this if you were at our final event. We looked at the typology of CCAM solutions. So really, there is no one size fits all. It's really different kinds of recommendations for different kinds of services. I think when people are thinking of automated public or shared transport, they maybe have one or two different things in mind, like a small shuttle-like vehicle. Often it can be a lot more than that. Of course, some solutions are more advanced than others. So you could have, for example, a classic bus service with fixed timetables and stops. We did a deliverable about 2 years ago now, so it was in the first third of the project, called Deliverable 5.2, and it was led by our operator partner Arriva in the Netherlands, and this was on CCAM solutions and vulnerable users, opportunities and constraints. So really realizing, accepting that you cannot have everything that is 100% perfect, and what is perfect for one person might not be for another. So what we did, we looked at all the existing services and projects that we could find that were either operating or recently operated, using CCAM vehicles, whether automated partly or fully automated. The majority were on a fixed route. I think maybe a lot of people have in mind a flexible service, but this is a lot more difficult with automation, and this is something that is probably going to come a bit later. Some have flexible timings where you can order the service, but it's still on a fixed route. That was 9 out of about 40 projects that we looked at, or demo sites, less than 40 projects, but 40 different pilot sites. So yeah, that's what the sort of state of the art is at the moment. Nearly all of what we looked at were European or national projects where the service was free. Only in one case was there a fare payable as part of a normal bus service. And then, of course, permanence is important. So many things are tested on a short term, and really you need a long demonstration, which is turning into a real deployed service for there to be consumer and public confidence in it. So geographically, a lot of people think, okay, it's a solution for urban areas. It's also a solution for rural areas. In fact, maybe even more so where there is a shortage of where there is very limited public transport or none at all. Maybe later interurban will come into play, depending on infrastructure and speeds, because you would need to have maybe higher speeds for interurban. And road types, of course, all types of roads are covered, but most services to date are going at really slow speeds. So this is low speed urban area, 30 km/h or below. This is the state of the art. You see at the bottom, most of these small vehicles that are used have a higher speed of 25 kilometers an hour. That is okay if you're going 2 or 3 kilometers around a certain site or a local area, but if you're going any further, then it becomes not attractive compared with other modes of transport. So this is something that needs to be looked at more for CCAM rolling out for public and shared transport. Also, the number of stops is important, because the more you have, the more you need request stops and flexibility. And in services which have a lot of stops, and a lot of standard bus routes have a huge number of stops, and of course the driver is then the one who has to make the decision to stop. So I think we're not at automated stopping yet, which would be different compared with maybe an automated rail-based system. So most of the vehicles that are demonstrated look like the one on the left. That was in Tricolo in Greece, I believe. City Mobile 2 project, which was a few years ago. The one on the right is about the only big bus service operating in Europe at the moment. Actually, it stopped operating a few months ago, and that was near Edinburgh in Scotland. And that was a regular timetable, fare payable service every half hour using motorways. And that is maybe the next level up, but it wasn't fully automated. And this is more or less where we're at with testing the technology, but with a safety driver. But the majority of these small vehicles, microbus and minibus and so on. And then, of course, the speed makes a difference, of course, and whether you need to be seated or not, and the onboard facilities. Nearly all trials so far have had an onboard member of staff. So from an operator point of view, the case for CCAM might be to reduce staff needs. At the moment, it's not doing that. You need somebody on board. Now, what we are saying in SINFONICA is, okay, there may be a few instances where you could have some of the vehicles on a service unstaffed and others staffed. And then if you need somebody, you know which one is going to have a member of staff on. But mostly going CCAM is not a way of reducing personnel, but of providing extra and additional and better services than before, and redeploying staff into different roles. So if you don't need a driver, you can have somebody who is an assistant or helper instead, also from a security point of view. So those were the typologies that we looked at, and then we had several workshops and internal meetings as well to look at the kinds of recommendations we can make. This is a little bit high level. So the more details are in the deliverable which has been submitted, but it's awaiting publication. So I'll talk about that later. The overall considerations for service planning. One of the opportunities of CCAM is to provide better services and not worse services. It's to look at places which don't have a public transport system or service, or a very limited one, or maybe at certain times, maybe weekends or evenings, where there is little service because of staff availability and so on, and low demand. It can provide new services that didn't exist before, and then it's not a downgrade to the user, and it's an upgrade. Frequency, service amplitude, and attracting different kinds of users is important in trials and demonstrations as well as public services. Most of what we looked at in terms of demonstration projects are running at certain times of the day only, on Mondays to Fridays only, nothing in the evening, nothing at night, usually nothing on a Sunday at least. This needs to move into a kind of almost round the clock, or at least a normal kind of public transport frequency and amplitude to be used and be attractive to people, and not just a small number of people who are maybe commuters. We did do interviews and focus groups on willingness to pay, on payment methods and so on. In most cases, it can be the same as normal public transport. More and more are by smartphone, by phone, by smart card or credit card. But there should be an option for people who don't have a specific card or a specific app, just like any other public transport. So there's not much difference there, but we do need to cover users with vulnerabilities, people who it shouldn't be a requirement to have a smartphone or a credit card in order to use public transport. And that goes for anything that is bookable as well. A lot of the opportunities for CCAM that are being talked about are in less dense and rural areas and suburban areas, peri-urban areas. And this is something that's still not done yet, where different where an automated booking process where the vehicles will come to you when you book them. It's they need to sort out the priority with a limited number of vehicles, and also avoid that. We're talking about urban and peri-urban and rural public transport here, not taxi services. So it's not. We're trying to move away from providing buses that have just got one passenger in them. This is public transport, and therefore it needs to pick up a number of people going to different places. The commercial speed is important. Of course, very low speeds are needed if the thing is totally unmanned or if there are standing passengers. But what could be done is that perhaps a hybrid system where there are some parts of the route reserved, like in the image on the left there, that could increase the speed on certain areas, and then you've got slow speeds in the more mixed traffic and residential areas. So a partial segregation is a good business case. And a key thing is not for it to be standalone. It should have the same look and feel as other public transport services. That's very important for confidence, and also to join up networks. We're not looking at creating new networks, but joining up and improving existing ones. So vehicle configuration, okay, I mentioned that, but of course, if you've got standing passengers, you're going to have a pretty low maximum speed, and then that would make it only attractive for very short distances. So you've got a seating issue there, and that moves into a capacity issue. If there is a service only every half hour, and a passenger gets left behind because the vehicle is full and they don't allow standing passengers, they might miss something important, and there's a lack of consumer confidence then. So what is needed is, instead of these very small vehicles moving about, is larger ones which can fit enough passengers on in urban areas, and people don't get left at bus stops. So a mistake there, so not. And then, of course, accessibility standards should be the same as any other kind of service, including onboard information, including, if there is no staff, a verbal and video link to a remote operator. Request stops and door opening. In most cases, this is done by a driver or operator. So again, the passenger needs to know what they are expected to do and what an operator or driver or remote operator is supposed to do. You cannot assume that people know. If they should know if they have to request a stop, or if they have to open the door, or if it will be done for them. And the same for everything else, for payment and so on. Operating ramps is another one. So I mentioned possible staffing levels. Could be on certain times and certain routes only. Doesn't have to be on every vehicle, but as long as people know what to expect, which vehicles are staffed and which ones are not. You could have a service where 1 in 2 vehicles has a staff member on, but with maybe higher staffing at times late at night where people might feel a little bit less safe from a security point of view. And the staff should also receive training, not just for the staff, but also drivers with users of special needs. So often, even now, people who are maybe wheelchair users or blind people will get some courses on using the different kinds of public transport in their area. And this is important for CCAM. And that means also a kind of standardization of vehicles in a certain region or a certain area or a certain route, so that there is only 1 or 2 different kinds of CCAM vehicle and not 10, so people know again what to expect and people can familiarize themselves with it. Okay, I will stop now and go back to Giacomo and to our 3 colleagues from the cities. I will come back to this next point at the end of the webinar. So I'll close my screen and back to you, Giacomo. And of course, if there's any questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Well, I will give the floor to Maren Link from Hamburg. Please, Maren.
Thank you, Giacomo. So you should be able to see my screen now. Hello, everyone. My name is Maren Link. I work for the Agency of Roads, Bridges and Waters. We are working, so for the City of Hamburg, we are one institution of the City of Hamburg, and we were one of the 4 groups of interests in the SINFONICA project, where we conducted several activities for participation and were evaluating different methods to participate different groups of people in the project. I want to give you a quick overview of the City of Hamburg and what we are doing right now related to the topic of CCAM, so Connected, Cooperative and Automated Mobility. And later on, I want to give you some insights into the experience that we gathered through the citizen engagement period. And I want to close with some recommendations for demonstration projects and public services. So for the City of Hamburg, as you know, we are the 2nd largest city in Germany. We have a big network of public transport services. We have ferries and buses and subways. So everything around and through the city as a multimodal transport network. Since 2016, we have the so-called ITS strategy, so the strategy for intelligent transport systems, where we focus a lot on gathering insights and exploring the possibilities that we have with ITS. We also hosted the ITS World Congress in October 2021. Maybe you have been there already. We also hosted this year the UITP Summit in June. Hamburg is a model region for mobility, so this means that we are even more part in EU projects related to CCAM and national activities related to CCAM. We are part of several projects. We will also be having a new subway line that will be fully automated. The construction already started, and we are really curious to see this live in some years, hopefully. We will also be hosting the next the UITP Summit in 2027. If you want to be visiting Hamburg then, and then you will have a good overview about all the activities that are taking place right now in Hamburg. A lot of activities are also taking place on the Hamburg TAF, the test track for automated and connected driving in Hamburg in the city center. You can see the red lines. So we have several crossroads and traffic lights that are part of this test track. We have several projects that have been conducted testing there, and also a lot of OEMs and suppliers and project partners who are using this test track for various CITS use cases that are being tested and evaluated. And we focus a lot on the technical feasibility and also on the evaluation of use cases. So as you can see, a lot is going on the technical side, and we were really excited to join the SINFONICA project, focusing more on the user perspective, which at least for my institution was a new field that we're really happy to dive into. And to give you some insights into the citizen engagement. I forgot the most important projects that we have right now. I'm sorry. We have 2 big projects, of course, right now related to autonomous driving. You have heard of them probably. We have the Ahoy project in the south of Hamburg. The Ahoy project is working on integrating autonomous shuttles into an on-demand, manually driven fleet in Harburg. As I said, a district in the south of Hamburg. And we have another project, the project Alike, which is located in the city center of Hamburg. They will also provide autonomous shuttles. They will integrate them into public transport, and they will not only work with one provider, but with 2 providers of autonomous shuttles. So a lot is going on related to this topic in the city of Hamburg, and we are very excited to see where these projects lead to. We will see the first cars in the next months and years on the streets, and we are really looking forward to that. Okay, and now regarding the citizen engagement experience in Hamburg that we gained through working in the SINFONICA project, we, as Giacomo mentioned before, we had several interviews, focus groups that we conducted with citizens, but also with vulnerable roadside users. So with several groups that have distinct barriers that they face in taking part in mobility, or they have specific needs that need to be addressed for them to be able to take part in mobility, specifically regarding autonomous mobility in the public transport. What we have on our plus side as the city of Hamburg is that we have a big public transport network in general that is also being promoted a lot in the city. In general, mobility is a hot topic in Hamburg, not only on the positive side, so we also have a lot of construction sites going on, and traffic is not always easy. But on the other side, a lot of really cool things are happening related to mobility. Citizens really get in touch with these topics. As I also mentioned before, we are a model city for the mobility in Germany. So Hamburg is also a lot in the news regarding these topics. And we have these international events that also bring a lot of publicity to the city. And they also always have open public days where citizens can join these events and get a look for themselves. So this is a plus side where we could attach our SINFONICA activities to a general interest in mobility in Hamburg, a lot of mobility topics that are related to the SINFONICA topics that we wanted to address. But we also learned that in a big city in like Hamburg, a lot is going on, and there are a lot of different activities related to mobility. So it's really hard sometimes to focus citizens on one topic and to bring them all together to really recruit citizens to work with us. So we faced some difficulties in that part. Another problem was that, as I mentioned, we also were trying to really involve the vulnerable road users because we really wanted to focus on them. We have a lot of associations working for different groups of vulnerable road users. The main problem is that they all are working with limited resources. So a lot of people are working there on their own free time, and they don't get any monetary benefit out of that. So they are really working from their heart. And we don't have a network where we can bring all of these associations together and create one access point where we just can go and bring our questions and ask for support and ask for them to interact with us. So it was really hard to reach out to everyone and to gather information about all the associations. So this is really one thing that we want to change in the future, to really create a network with specific access points. Also the other way around, if vulnerable road user associations have questions or want to take part in specific activities, they know where to reach the city of Hamburg and the public administrations. We also learned that, as I mentioned before, a lot is going on regarding mobility topics, but this also means that people don't want to put too much of their free time into these activities. And as we don't have a citizen panel that was already existing, that could just be addressed for mobility issues, so it was also really hard for us sometimes to gather people to really join our activities and to motivate them to bring their views to the table. What made it hard in general is that when we conducted these activities for SINFONICA, both of the projects that I mentioned before, Ahoy and the like, they were not yet on the table. So this was really unfortunate that we couldn't join our efforts more. And this also made it hard for us because the topic of autonomous driving is still, or was still, really abstract. I mean, people have heard of of it in the news, at least most of the people that we were talking with, but up to this day, it really still has little relevance for people. So it's not affecting their everyday life. It's not the same like the construction site in front of their house. So it was also sometimes challenging to really create this image of how could the vehicle be, how could it change your life, how would be the experience using these vehicles as a public service. So yeah, this was really interesting. We learned a lot how to do that. And yeah, this was a good experience also for us. And now for the recommendations, as Andrew already has given a lot of insights into recommendations for the public service, I want to focus a little bit on recommendations for how to engage the citizens or the people that you want to involve in demo projects or in future activities. So one recommendation would be if you're at least working for a bigger city or a bigger network, to really bring together all the forces, to have a network, to involve citizens with a network, to create interfaces and contact points where you can join your forces. So this is something that we want to do for the city of Hamburg, specifically coming to the second point here for the vulnerable road users. So we really want to create a network where we bring all vulnerable road users associations together, so that we can build specific contact points where we can bring in our questions, and then they can be spread through the network to really, make it a quick process, a process that is not needing too much resources, and maybe also providing, a lot of positive impact for the vulnerable road users associations themselves. So this is something that we want to change for the city of Hamburg. And then also the point of making a topic really relevant. I mean, now we have the situations that we have, the two projects on autonomous shuttles. They also have their own participational activities. And we were also able to bring in our recommendations from the SINFONICA project, which is really nice. And they have more options of providing the shuttle, showing how the vehicle will look like, having people enter and exiting the vehicle and talking about what needs to be done on the interior or how the service would need to be look like. So this is really nice to see how many more options they have just with the vehicle being there. And this is, a recommendation for maybe demo projects to really think about how can you bring the things that you talk about, how can you make them more tangible, more, not just an image, but really make it something that people can imagine using or working with. And maybe really plan this in your project, that you have the resources to do things, to provide a lot of insight into what your future service could look like, so that people really can answer questions and think about what they would need from that. And the last recommendation, this is probably nothing new, but we learned that this really is something really important, to understand that it is really necessary to keep the barriers for participation as low as possible. So people really don't have a lot of time in their free time, and you also specifically want to reach maybe people who are not that much interested in mobility, because we had a lot of people who really wanted to join because they were interested in autonomous driving and they were like really engaging in these topics. But maybe it's also good to engage with people who are more distant from this topic, who are maybe not that interested but are still future users. So it's really important to keep time requirements low. Approach people really where the people are gathering, get to their locations, see how you can reach them in their circles, in their areas. Inclusivity was a big topic, so we really were making sure that we were as inclusive as possible, providing scenarios where everyone could feel free to join and to interact. and also maybe provide some incentives for people to join the activities. That also helped a lot sometimes. So these are recommendations from Hamburg regarding the activities that we conducted to engage the citizens. If you have any more questions, here's my email address. Feel free to reach out. And then I give the word back to Giacomo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maren, for this very concrete presentation of the recommendation from the city of Hamburg. And now I'll leave the floor to Matthew Shelton from Transport for West Midlands. Please, Matthew.
Thank you, Giacomo. And good afternoon, all. Thanks for being here. I'm just going to share my slides now. Okay, it should be showing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So sorry, I was just waiting there. Yes, as mentioned, I'm Matthew Shelton. I work for Transport for West Midlands. Today, I'm going to be talking about our deployment, our scale deployment. So we are, again, one of the 4 groups of interest on SINFONICA. As we've recently been working on a live deployment, which is kind of still live, I thought we could feedback on that, some of the operational and some of the work that's gone in, and aligned with what SINFONICA is all about as well. So just to begin with, very quickly, for those who are unaware, the West Midlands is the 2nd biggest metropolitan area in the UK, after London with 2.9 million. So on that map of the UK, you'll see a little red blotch in the middle. That is the West Midlands. It's quite small by area, but it's very dense, very urban, and very diverse as well. It's widely regarded as kind of the home of automotive manufacturing in the UK, and there was, well, still are big brands here like Jaguar Land Rover, but previously there was things like Rover and Mini and Triumph, and there's quite a history of automotive manufacturing here. But in the kind of 90s, that went away and left a bit of a vacuum, and the West Midlands has been kind of being a bit introspective here and looking at where we see ourselves in the new automotive world. And autonomous vehicles is something that has kind of fallen into our lap a little bit because we've got a big supply chain here. There's a lot of universities which are focused on the area, and many of them are part of the SCALE project. So just to introduce you to this, and I can see James is on, so James, feel free to step in and slap my wrists should I get anything wrong. SCALE is an acronym. It is Solihull and Coventry Automated Links Evolution. And what it is a route running from the NEC, which is the National Exhibition Centre. It's a big conference site, and it's in Solihull, but it's labelled as Birmingham, to Birmingham Business Park, which is a large area of businesses like Rolls-Royce and Fujitsu, and there's around, I think it's 40,000 employees on site, something ridiculous like that. So it's a large number. So we're linking the two because at the moment there is one bus service that goes through, which is part of a very long route. It's not very reliable. People don't really use it as a commuter link between the two. There's also a railway station on site, and Birmingham Airport is next door as well. So there's kind of a lot going on in this area. And while it's relatively well served with rail links, it's the actual last mile thing is not so well served. So as you can see in the picture there, we've got 3 Omeo lift shuttles. So there's many partners which are part of this project. It's led by Solihull Council. TfWM, Transport for West Midlands, are the kind of de facto operator of this. Omeo are the vehicle provider. We've got Warwick University involved as WMG. We've also got Coventry University involved. There's going to be lots of companies which I forget to name. I think IPG, D-Risk, Direct Line Insurance. And if there's anyone else, I apologise. But yeah. So it's a big project. As you can see, it's quite ambitious in scale as well. So here is a map of the route. So you can see at the bottom, that's where it starts around that lake. That's the NEC site. You've got the rail station adjacent to the NEC, and on the other side of that rail station, just to the north, is Birmingham Airport. The site is actually a bit strange, as you can see. There's a lot of car parks, so there's a lot of dead space there. It's not a particularly nice walk between the two, and it's quite a lengthy walk should you want to walk it. So really, the only options are to drive or to rely upon what may be considered a fairly unreliable bus service. Birmingham Business Park as well has a lot of car parking, and it's almost encouraged to use the car here. So we wanted to offer an alternative by linking the rail station and the business park, and autonomy was an option here that we decided to go with. So moving on to the next slide, these are the objectives of the project. So really it was looking at that business case of, is autonomous a viable transport mode between the two? And what does the specification of a permanent service look like? So at the moment, we're currently using the Omeo lift shuttles. We are aware of limitations around their capacity. What would the capacity look like if we were rolling this out en masse, especially for a peak time service, which would be serving the morning and evening peak? What does remote operations and supervision? So again, what does the operations look like of something when it's taken into regular service? TfWM being a public transport authority, kind of well placed to take on that. So that's really what we've been looking into. And Andrew mentioned some quite pertinent points earlier. One of the main things we've been working on is around onboard safety operators. So there is a safety operator which Omeo does provide. We have had our staff shadowing them, learning the ropes, and Omeo have created a manual, which is the first of its kind in the UK, of what it looks like to train for being a safety operator. So we're finding that we're kind of breaking ground all the time with this project. A lot of it we're learning as we go along and almost creating the playbook. So that safety manual being the first of its kind, that will then be something we disseminate out to the wider UK local authorities, which we are part of a group which kind of feedback. It's a minimum of 3 months of public service, so I think it has been operational since around March time. We are at the moment between what was the end of Scale 1 and the beginning of Scale 2. So Scale 2 is an enhancement of the original project, allowing us to look into the operations a bit more and extending the time period to the end of the year that we'll be operating. We've got 3 vehicles on the site. We've also got a kind of a hub for the vehicles where they're charged overnight and they're secure. And we're looking at that handover of operations. So what it looks like for the vehicle and technology provider to hand over full operations to a operator. So again, going back to Andrew's points around defined route, this is a defined route. It has been mapped. It's low speed because the site itself is a 15-mile-per-hour site, so we can't go beyond that. That's why it's kind of ideal for this technology, because we're able to kind of deploy at low speed and not really irritate the other drivers on the road. We use LiDAR for object detection, so there's several LiDAR and cameras on the vehicle. There's also full 360 vision, and there is a roadmap for remote teleoperation. So Transport for West Midlands also has a facility called the Regional Traffic Coordination Centre, the RTCC. This is something that we would look to kind of use that remote supervision from a facility like this. We have found there are a few issues. So if the route is blocked, and being an exhibition site, there's a lot of deliveries going on. So a lot of large vehicles being parked on double yellow lines. The vehicle will stop and we will have to manually take the vehicle round. LiDAR detection is still improving. Some of the weather we have in the UK isn't great for some of the LiDAR. So there's a lot of rain, there's a lot of puddling, a lot of low light that we have to work through. And some of the more complex ODDs do take a little bit longer to work through. So one of the main issues that we're having on the site is crossing the public highway on quite a high speed piece of road. So we are having to look into what the safety case looks like around operating on that road, and that's something that we shall come to as part of Scale 2. So before we actually deployed the vehicles, IPG are the simulator for the project, and they did some route simulation and testing. So they set up the route, and as you can see in the bottom right hand corner there, we've got a simulation of what the vehicle looks like. This was some really interesting and important work that went on as part of this, really mapping out what the issues are going to be before we even get there with the physical vehicle, and we know how we can kind of try and work around these things. I'm just going to move on quickly. Again, this is around some of the collision analysis involving AVs in California. That was used and looked into what caused those collisions and how we can make sure the easy stuff which was going on over in California isn't replicated in the UK, and use that in our safety case to kind of bolster it. And this is probably the more interesting part for followers of SINFONICA. So I would say this package was very much inspired by the SINFONICA project. We decided to carry out some customer experience insight. So this consisted of 3 trial surveys. This was just surveying people on the NEC site before the vehicles were deployed about how they felt. Then we carried out some interviews on board, and we also did some really what I think were crucial focus groups with a company called Motability. So Motability are a company that provides sort of bespoke specifications for private vehicles and making them more accessible to people with accessibility issues. So we got some really good information out of this. As you can see, the majority of people said that they didn't really know a lot about autonomous vehicles, but they were interested. There's kind of a fear factor in there as well, but also aligned with that, you've got the majority of people saying that they would feel safe in autonomous vehicles. So they're kind of the key takeaways. The bottom one I find quite fascinating, as in there seems to be an uncertainty about trust of the vehicles. So and again aligns with what we were doing in SINFONICA, looking into how people view these vehicles. I think there's still some work to be done. I think the more residents of the West Midlands see them on the roads, the more trusting they will become. But this was really the kind of first exposure a lot of people had to autonomous vehicles. And again, these were some of the concerns of and importance of factors around the vehicles. Now you can see it's almost overwhelmingly around safety on board. And going back to what Andrew said, the answer to this may be just safety operators for the time being until we really get a handle on this. I know that there's been mention of having virtual supervisors and screens, video screens, things like that. But I think until we realise what a viable alternative may be, the safety operator may be the best way forward at this point in time. So interestingly, speed came lowest. I think that may be because we were operating on a 15-mile-per-hour site and we were limited by the speed. Also, pricing came quite low, which we thought was interesting, as there is a danger of this almost creating a two-tier transport system, especially around traditional bus services, and that if you're using autonomous as a supplement. I do realise I've taken quite a bit of time already, so I'll whiz through the last few, which is just an overview of what the phases looked like. So phase one of the trial was just around the kind of entry to the NEC, and this did bring up what we would call one of the first sort of pinch points, which is just around where that number 15 is. There's a pedestrian crossing, and the vehicle's having issues because it's quite a heavily used pedestrian crossing, so you've got a lot of people all the time, and we found the vehicle would wait in perpetuity for people to cross. At times we would have to take control of the vehicle and push it through that pedestrian crossing to make sure that the route would run smoothly. Phase two, again, we had to do some work around the road layout here of changing how it is, as you can see where gate one is on that picture. The site is fairly private, so you don't get much general public driving through there. There's a lot of gates, which means we're having to either use tabs in the window to open the gates or having them manually opened by operators on site. This made it easier because we weren't interacting with that much traffic, but it did create its own set of problems which we needed to work around. Phase three, again, another automated barrier, and as I mentioned earlier, it's not the best for walking through. We had to create a new footway where people could access the hotel, which is in the top there, where number 4 is. And finally, this is a business park itself, where just past that there was a gate which was permanently locked. We are creating a temporary automated barrier there, which will open when the vehicle approaches. And then, as you can see, Birmingham Business Park itself is a loop. It's quite a large loop, and the speed will go up to 30 miles an hour. That is going to be quite an interesting use case to see how that the shuttle works there, especially as you're working with, well, there'll be a lot more traffic on there than on the NEC site. So that is the scale project. I'm more than happy to speak to anyone about any kind of detail that they want from that. It's very much a kind of overview of what we've been doing. There's my contact details should anyone like to reach out, and any questions, I'm more than happy to field them. So I'll stop sharing there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for your very interesting presentation. Now I'll leave the floor to Elena Patatuka from Trikala, Greece, and then we will have some floor to questions at the end of her presentation. Thank you.
Yes, hello. Thank you. I'm sharing my screen. I hope that you can see my screen.
Yes, if you can put in presentation more.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So I will speak a little bit on recommendations as well for the demo projects that Trikala is running and public services representing the city of Trikala. So for the people that maybe don't know Trikala very well, Trikala is a city, medium city located in Greece, a city of 80,000 citizens and 120,000 including the peri-urban and regional areas. And it is a city that is in the path of automation and digitalization, that currently has also a climate neutrality plan. So it is a smart city since 2010. Different fragmented initiatives have been going on. Also, it is part of the 100 climate neutral and smart cities EU mission that intend to become climate neutral by 2030. And is also having a strategic plan in order to reform and digitalize the public sector until the end of this year, since there is a public funding that is allocated to the city of Trikala, which has a horizon of the next years, of course, under implementation. Concerning the mobility aspects, one of the main problems that we have identified is that the rural areas are underserved by public transportation. So a lot of people, there is a large dependency on private vehicles, and their CCAM could play a role. So that the negative impact on the environment is decreased and the traffic congestion is also decreased as well. So some solutions from CCAM tools and services have been identified also with the help of citizens, in order to build an alternative and sustainable mobility agenda. I will mention here that there is a whole portfolio of projects that have been running parallel to SINFONICA project, that have also embraced in other levels and have been complementary, let's say. So back then, the City Mobile 2, the Smarta 2 and the Avint and Elviten projects that are already finished, but also the Into CCAM project and the SHOW project, as well as the Elaborator, that have been running in parallel with the SINFONICA project, and have been working in parallel levels. So I will mention a little bit what we have tried to do in SHOW and Into CCAM, which is a project that had a big pilot demonstration with 2 automated vehicles running from the city center until, in the first level, the intercity bus terminal, and then the sports science terminal. This has been also feeding the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan of Trikala, and also the vehicles have run in mixed traffic with no segregation, and multiple technical scenarios have been examined for having this real life operation. So, for example, overtaking maneuvers, the hard braking of the vehicles, the remote operation has been tested, etc. So that we can have, the goal was to have an on-demand service from the city center to the peri-urban areas. Another thing that has been running in parallel and has been constructed by all projects, and also from SINFONICA part having a great significance on it, was to develop a living lab culture and work with citizens, have a community approach, and also involve the different user groups and identify their needs. For example, the citizens from the city center, but also from the peri-urban areas that do not enjoy a frequent bus line, but also tourists, other gender groups, visually impaired people with reduced mobility, and vulnerable groups as well. Also, a multi-stakeholder approach has been uploaded, and also the public surveys have been of great importance in the context of this living lab approach. Interviews, but also surveys. Different set of questions were addressed to different target groups in order to examine the significance, the problems, some suggestions of the CCAM tools and services, and how they can improve the public transport services on a daily mode. For example, in which zones to be deployed, which time zone during night or day, if they are about to replace conventional buses on existing routes or new routes, or if people prefer, citizens prefer to have these services as a complement of the current public transport system. Or other questions on how attractive the automated vehicles are, how environmentally viable they find the solution, etc. So all this data coming from the citizens were the canvas in which we tried to also design the use cases and the technological parts of the pilot. I will sum up with some lessons learned and key insights from all this experience from the project. So to start within small scale and control environments, and then adjust to bigger and wider mixed traffic urban environments. So it is of significant importance to organize and start the pilot demonstrations in a small scale first, with specific target groups involved, so that the risk is reduced, and build acceptance step by step with these groups, and with some specific use cases to see if they are valid or not, and if they respond to any local problems in the local community. Another thing is so the pre-demo testing to be under limited conditions. This has a result that the ecosystem is safe and is built progressively. Another thing is the significance of the stakeholder engagement and public acceptance for the projects. And this is something that the SINFONICA project has underlined and provided a lot of data and tools and methodologies to work with different social groups. So to co-create with local communities and citizens on the solutions from an initial stage, and in different levels. The need to work on tools and services that are well explained and visibly clear. And then stakeholders beyond citizens, stakeholder groups from the private or the public sectors, from the academy and the civil society must be also involved from a first initial stage to ensure and align the expectations. This is very important in order to design the use cases and the scenarios in all projects. So this results in elevated inclusivity, some practical solutions that are meaningful for the city, and of course, a stronger user development collaboration. Another thing that was valid was how we can build on the regulatory and legal frameworks, of course, using all this co-design experience and living lab culture. The legal framework is of great importance for building the pilot demonstration projects, because it is something that is already there as a prerequisite, and the pilot demonstration has to happen in a legal framework in the national countries, and of course then in an EU level landscape. So in Trikala, the pilot demonstration has to be changed and simplified due to legal and legislative constraints, but then vice versa, we tried to also feed and improve during the life cycle of the project the legal framework for the CCAM services and for the automated vehicles particularly. This collaborative process between the ministry, the different municipalities, but also other stakeholders has resulted in improved frameworks for adaptable solutions. For example, when we had the YAPE robots or the automated vehicles of SOW, the minivans, to be circulated, it was under development. The fact that in the control center, the operator could monitor a number of vehicles, and after the renewal of the legal framework, the result was one remote operator in the control center could observe and monitor 4 automated vehicles on the same time. This, of course, changed the potential business plan of this service, as only one person could monitor 4 different vehicles on a daily basis, instead of 4 people monitoring 4 vehicles. So each one for one vehicle. And this makes sense a lot for the governance level and also for the business level. Another thing is the physical and digital infrastructure readiness. Also from the SINFONICA interviews and data, the importance of the infrastructure for the citizens was underlined. And it was clear the need to adopt IoT, remote control and fleet management tools. The physical routes should also be suitable. So the design of the route, the obstacles, the potential signals, the width of the lanes, etc. All this had to be planned very well and also adjusted in case something was not there. Also from the connectivity aspect, when we lost connectivity signal, we had to adjust a little bit the route or improve the infrastructure. So a very important and key lesson learned is to build an integrated solution for the pilot demonstration and not only vehicle-centered solutions. A last thing is the scalability and the integration with existing systems. So pilots are not explored and examined in silos or isolated. The different pilot demonstrations or methodologies are being elaborated in parallel, and they are all complementary. And this is the only way to move from a pilot demonstration to the commercial deployment and to a real life operation after the life cycle of a project, which is, of course, what we would need as a city. The systemic thinking of scale, of cost and integration with existing services, both regulatory but also public transportation legacy, is very important. So to sum up, some takeaways have been also to start from control environments, small scale, and then pedestrian roads, low traffic areas, or control environments, and then move on and scale up the demonstration from a pre-demo phase to a demo phase, to have an early stakeholder engagement and also public acceptance methodology and activities, so that we can build a solid scenario and we can design the use cases smoothly by integrating all different data and user needs, for example, the industry, the citizens, the transport authorities, and the policymakers, but also academic and the research community, so that we can also boost the innovation part in the process, for having an integrated service that really responds to the local challenges. Also to have the legal and regulatory frameworks as catalysts and not as constraints. So to have clear laws, liability and insurance landscapes before or in parallel of course, with the deployment. Also, the infrastructure must be ready in physical and digital level, which is essential for a safe deployment, and the scalability that remains as a challenge and as an opportunity for the future. So to move from pilots to permanent services, to commercial services that require better integration with public systems and business models. Thank you very much. So I pass the floor to you again.
Thank you, Elena. So I am now chairing this because Giacomo had to leave. So I'll just so thank you very much, Elena. If there are any points or questions, you can please anyone can put them in the chat. And I just have a final last part before we close. So this part focuses on demonstration projects. Again, this is just a brief overview. So many of those, as you've seen from three presentations, our cities, our groups of interest, pilot sites are involved in several other projects as well and have been for many years. So a lot of experience for those has gone into our work on what comes next in demonstration projects, recommendations, especially things that Matthew mentioned as well, about not just about safety, but about the feeling of safety and security as well. So this is where you still need human beings just for personal security, this kind of thing. So we did look at a lot of why different pilot sites were chosen and for different kinds of demonstrations. There were various reasons for this. Some of the ones are here. So it was, for example, a last mile issue between maybe a restricted area or maybe an area like Matthew mentioned around the National Exhibition Centre near Birmingham, which is maybe an area which is not very pleasant to walk or cycle along. So this is providing an alternative transport. Sometimes it's linking to a station, business park, an economic zone, something like this. Often you have a local landowner or operator who is interested in being involved in a CCAM service deployment or demonstration. Multimodality is important, so it's often linking a railway station to centres of trip demand, especially in towns and cities where the station is not quite in the centre. Linking rural areas on the periphery of a small town or city. A lot of smaller towns have very little public transport, maybe interurban services, but nothing local. And this is where CCAM in these low density areas can provide extra services, and also interest by operators and so on. One key thing is to test services on different kinds of roads, including mixed traffic, including reserve traffic, and so on. So we looked at these things, and some general overarching guidelines. So this is not everything. We did do 2 webinars before this. We did one in July, which covered also recommendations for information and awareness. So all the information, user information type webinar recommendations are in this first webinar, and they will all be recorded. They were all recorded and they will all be online afterwards, so you can go back to those if you like. So just on a general level at large scale demonstrations, yeah, the service should be as close as possible to a standard public transport service. So this is talking about the capacity, so not just mini vehicles, but larger ones as well. Obviously, each site has its own needs. Think about how many people will use it, the the level of comfort and the commercial speed. If a demonstration is free, consider how ticketing would work or fare payment would work in a real environment. If it was a ticketed normal public transport service, maybe it would be honesty payment with spot checks, or it could be, depending on the type of vehicle, that you need to have some kind of payment in order to board or open the doors. Look at options without a smartphone app. You should not need an app to use any kind of public transport, especially if there is hailing or booking or payment in advance required. There needs to be other options. It doesn't have to be just a phone line, but it could be if there is a staffed centre like a bus station or a railway station, and there are other staff that can act as an agent to take reservations or payments. That is one option. It could be that services that have an onboard agent, that agent could be used to reserve future trips and to answer queries, to take payments and so on. Consider not just the easy wins, but what kind of new services could exist on more usual traffic speeds, on different kinds of roads using larger vehicles, also in different kinds of weather conditions, different kinds of hilliness. Try and go a little bit beyond the boundaries compared with what has been demonstrated so far. And integration is really important. And then lastly, this says, provide results that assist CCAM deployment beyond the usual technical scope of the project. That means if the main purpose of the project is to perhaps test a different kind of technology, to test the vehicle, to test the safety, the LiDARs, the detection, and so on, try to go beyond that as well, and check for transparability issues, scaling up issues, and also the economic issues. There's another slide in a minute on business case, as well as the user needs and the user feedback. Quite often, when not from any scientific study, but when I've asked projects what kind of users are using your services, quite a high proportion of people who are just interested in trying out a CCAM service. It's great that there is this interest, but we need more people who are actually using the service as a normal service from A to B, as a part of their everyday requirements. So there were some recommendations also on the participatory approach. So this is, it involved this from the planning stage. So it's not just the communication one way, but also operational decisions, and come with different options to user groups at the planning phase. Use different and flexible evaluation tools, to not just the technical functioning of the system, but also on the inclusivity, on the satisfaction, and trust is very important. So Matthew mentioned it before, there's often a lack of trust. Sometimes that lack of trust is not just about safety, it's about personal security, it's about reliability, it's about will the vehicle stop in the middle of nowhere because a small animal walks across the road or a bird hits it or something? What happens then? Do we then have to wait an hour for an operator to come and release us? So that kind of thing as well. It's maybe overcautiousness as well as safety risk. Co-engagement, obviously, we need to take account of different language and cultural issues, as well as infrastructure differences in historic cities and villages compared with rural areas or areas with a lot more space and modern infrastructure. One of our parallel projects or ongoing projects in Ertico now is Cultural Road, and that is looking also at the much more the local and cultural aspects of developing CCAM and how it can be different in different parts of Europe and the world. Clear feedback loops means that we don't just take on board people's comments, but we show how we took it on board, and that fosters trust and longer term engagement, and people can see that comments from users and recommendations from users have been put into effect, or how they have put into effect. Or maybe if we didn't put it into effect, why not? We considered these things, but certain things were not possible for whatever reason. Be honest with the users and with citizens in general. Even if it's bad news, it's better to be honest than to be apart from them. And then lastly, disseminate the participatory outcomes as a part of the project deliverable. So not just everyone said it was great, but also what worked, what didn't work so well, were the things, were the difficulties, and how would you overcome those if you did it again? I think every European project, or every national project, every kind of project is a learning process, and we have to take lessons on board from them and learn what errors happened or what unexpected things happened, so we can streamline things for future deployments. And then the last couple is, yeah, we did a little exercise. It's my colleague John Paddington led this part, so I credit him with everything. Consider the journey flow. So whatever kind of service you have, think what happens from the passenger's decision to go somewhere until they arrive at their destination. They research how to get there. They maybe walk to a pickup point. They may have to reserve something. They get on, they take a seat, and so on. This is one example of an autonomous shuttle operating in a campus environment with a safety steward on board. So it's quite a simple setup, but consider what could go wrong. Not just technical failures, but also passenger behavior, external user behavior, pedestrians, cyclists, as well as drivers. What could happen in each case, and plan contingencies for each kind of case. Vehicle not turning up, too many people to get on board the vehicle, what happens? This is one more example, and this is a low-speed autonomous shuttle with no staff on board. So we have a slightly different series of steps here. For example, confirmation of a journey. And then lastly, consider the business cases and the affordability. I think if we're the second one first, if we are talking about affordability, normally to integrate with public transport, fare structures, if it is paid for, should be the same as ordinary public transport. So it should be the same level, the same kind of ticketing and everything, not to have a tier service. It should be on the same level. But then from an operator point of view, at least in the short and medium term, CCAM is not very cheap to deploy. It's not really saving staff resources, but it can provide benefits in the longer run. So there is the business model question: where and when to deploy it. What, even if it works perfectly from the point of view of technology and the user, if it's not sustainable in the longer term, especially if it's funded by a local transport authority, then it will not last. We have to look at how this can work, and maybe where the quick wins are, where it can be operated at a reasonable price, or even in the longer term more cheaply than traditional public transport, and providing a better service. So these are just some of the high-level things to look at. These will all be in deliverable 5.4, which is done, but it's awaiting EU feedback. So this will be online on the project website very soon. Not quite yet, because we have to get the approval first. So you can follow the SINFONICA media to see when that is online. We do have, on the right-hand side, we do have our website. We also have our Knowledge Map Explorer that was presented in the final event. And most of the information from the project is available there in a more simplified way and a user-friendly way. So please take a look at SINFONICA KME. We have our social media, of course, and we will upload this webinar and the two previous ones onto our social media and website. On the left, I'd like you to please consider, if you stayed with us through this webinar, answering this short online survey. It's about 10 minutes long. It was developed by colleagues in the Technical University of Dresden. It's on that link there, you can see, or this QR code. This will also be put on the project's website and LinkedIn. We will have it open for about 2 weeks, and it's really to see which of our kinds of results are interesting or useful for people. So it's aimed at people who are either researching or studying CCAM deployment, and whether they're looking at social factors or other factors, which results they are maybe more interested in, and perhaps some that they are less interested in, and which ones they are likely to use. So it does link to some Sinfonica deliverables and the Knowledge Map Explorer you can see on the right. So it might be an idea to have a look at the Knowledge Map Explorer before answering the survey, if at all possible. That is all. We are, I think, more or less on time. Yes, 1 minute before. So unless there are other questions, I would like to thank all of the speakers, from Matthew, Elena, from Maren, and for Giacomo for hosting it at the beginning. In answer to the question, yes, we will put presentations online. It'll be probably later this week or latest next week. And also there'll be presentations from the previous webinars. So you can see everything as well as the deliverables on sinfonica.eu. Thank you very much, everyone, and wish you a great rest of the day and rest of the week.
Thank you, Andrew.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you.
I'll end it.
Thank you. Bye.